My sisters told me that I am a bad influence on their children because I married an old man and called me a gold digger. Now, they are at my door crying because I canceled their allowance and vacations. My sisters Kendall and Jill had a lot to say when I married Robert. He's 23 years older than me. We met at a medical conference where we both presented research papers. I'm a pediatric surgeon. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon. But all Kendall and Jill saw was the age gap. "You're such a gold digger," Kendall said at my wedding reception, right in front of my colleagues. Jill nodded. "Obviously just about his money. What else could it be?" I tried explaining. "We work in the same field. We talk for hours about medicine. We both love hiking. We volunteer at the same clinic." Kendall laughed. "Sure. And his retirement account has nothing to do with it. The thing my sisters conveniently forgot? I'd been paying for their lives for 5 years. Kendall's mortgage when her husband lost his job? I covered it for 8 months. Jill's kids' private school? I paid the tuition. Their family vacations? My credit card? Their car repairs? Always me. But now I was a gold digger. A bad influence." At my nephew's birthday party, Kendall pulled her kids away when I tried to hug them. "We need to be careful about what values they're exposed to," she said loudly. Other parents heard. At Jill's daughter's recital, she introduced Robert and me to her friends like this. "My sister and her sugar daddy. He's basically buying her." Robert's face went red. "I'm not buying anyone. We're married. For now," Jill said. "Until she gets what she wants." What hurt most was when they told our parents. Mom called me crying. "Kendall says you're prostituting yourself, that you sold yourself to an old man for money." Those were her exact words, Mom. Not mine. "Still," she said, "what will people think? People will think I'm a successful surgeon who married another successful surgeon." But the final straw came at Christmas. Kendall's kids ran up to me, excited about their trip. "Aunt Lisa, we're going to Hawaii because of you." Kendall yanked them back. "We're going to Hawaii because Mommy and Daddy work hard, not because of her." "But Mom, you said Aunt Lisa pays for everything," her oldest said. Kendall turned to me. "Stop trying to buy my children's love. You're setting a terrible example. Marrying for money. Using men. That's not something they should see as normal." Jill jumped in. "We don't want our daughters thinking it's okay to be kept women, to sell themselves to the highest bidder." Robert was standing right there. They acted like he was invisible. Like he was just a wallet I'd married. That night I made some phone calls. Canceled the Hawaii trip. Canceled Jill's vacation to Florida. Stopped the automatic transfers for their allowances. Changed my credit card numbers. Removed them as authorized users. Everything. Kendall called the next day, screaming. "The travel agent says you canceled our trip." "That's right. Why would you do that?" The kids were so excited. "Because I'm a gold digger, remember? A bad influence. You don't want your kids exposed to my values. That includes my money. That's different. The trips have nothing to do with that. The trips have everything to do with that. My gold-digging money paid for them. Can't have your kids touched by dirty money." She tried reasoning. "Look, maybe I said some things. You've said lots of things. To everyone. At every family event. So no more trips. But we already told the kids. Sounds like a you problem." Jill called next. "My credit card got declined. The one you gave me for emergencies. I canceled it. What if there's an actual emergency? Call your husband. Or use your own credit. But you've always helped us. I'm too busy being a prostitute, apparently." "That's what you told Mom, right? That I'm prostituting myself?" She got quiet. That was taken out of context. "No, it wasn't. You think I'm a gold digger. A kept woman. A bad influence on your kids. So I'm removing my bad influence. All of it. Including my money." 2 weeks later, they both showed up at my house. Robert answered the door. "We need to talk to Lisa," Kendall said, not even acknowledging him. "About what?" he asked. "Family stuff," Jill said. "You wouldn't understand. I came to the door. They want their gold digger money back, Robert. That's what this is about." Kendall started crying. Her tears didn't move me at all. I stayed right where I was in the doorway with Robert beside me, his hand finding mine and squeezing it tight. Kendall kept crying, making these loud sobbing noises like she wanted the whole neighborhood to hear. Jill stood behind her looking uncomfortable but not saying anything to stop her sister's performance. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly, so they both could hear every word. "You need to leave my property right now if you're just here to ask for money after calling me a prostitute and gold digger for months." Kendall's head snapped up at that, her face red and wet with tears. Robert's grip on my hand got tighter as Kendall suddenly lunged forward, trying to push past him into our house. "We need to talk about this like family," she said, her voice going high and desperate. Robert stepped sideways to block her path, his body creating a wall between Kendall and our front door. I felt him tense up beside me, ready to physically stop her if she tried to force her way in again. Jill reached out and grabbed Kendall's arm, pulling her back a step. "Kendall, don't," Jill said quietly. But Kendall wasn't listening, still trying to see past Robert into our house like she had some right to be there. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," I said, my voice getting louder. "You show up demanding things after everything you've said and done." Kendall finally stopped trying to push past Robert and just stood there breathing hard. Then her whole face changed, like someone flipped a switch. The tears stopped. Her expression went from crying to something more calculated. She wiped her face with her hands and straightened up. Look, I never meant those things I said, Kendall said, her voice suddenly calm and reasonable. You took everything out of context. I stared at her, amazed at how fast she could change tactics. Jill nodded quickly, jumping in to support whatever new approach Kendall was trying. We were just worried about you, Jill added, worried that an older man might be taking advantage of you. That's all it was. I felt Robert's whole body go rigid next to me. His jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. So which is it? I asked them both, my voice cold. Do you think Robert is taking advantage of me? Or do you think I'm taking advantage of him? The silence that followed my question stretched out long and heavy. Kendall opened her mouth, then closed it. Jill looked down at the ground. Neither of them could answer because they knew whatever they said would sound bad. Kendall finally spoke up, her words coming out slow and careful. We thought the age gap was concerning. That's all. Before I could respond, Jill had to add more. And the money situation looked bad to outsiders. Robert let go of my hand and stepped forward. His voice came out controlled, but so cold it made me shiver. What exactly looks bad about two surgeons with similar incomes building a life together? Kendall stumbled over her words, making these half-formed sentences that didn't go anywhere. Jill kept staring at the ground like the concrete was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. Neither of them could actually say out loud what they'd been implying for months, not with Robert standing right there asking them directly. I let the silence hang there for another few seconds, watching them squirm. Then I crossed my arms and looked at both of them. You have exactly one chance to explain what you actually want. Kendall's face crumpled again, but this time the tears looked more real. Jeffrey still hasn't found steady work, she said, her voice breaking. We're 2 months behind on the mortgage again. Jill spoke up too, much quieter than Kendall. Rosemary's school sent a tuition reminder last week. We can't cover it without help. There it was. The real reason they showed up at my door. Not to apologize. Not to make things right. Just to get money. The anger that hit me felt like fire in my chest. They still thought after everything they'd said and done, after calling me those names and treating Robert like garbage, that I would just hand over money like nothing happened. You're unbelievable, I said. Both of you. You actually think I'll just start paying for your lives again after everything you said? Gold diggers and prostitutes probably shouldn't be trusted with family financial decisions, right? And I definitely shouldn't be allowed around your precious children. Kendall flinched like I'd slapped her. Jill's face went red. But the kids are asking about you, Kendall said, trying yet another approach. They want to know why Aunt Lisa doesn't come around anymore. I laughed, but it wasn't a nice sound. Have you told Victoria and the others what you called me at Christmas? Have you explained to them why the Hawaii trip got canceled? Kendall's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Jill finally showed some backbone, stepping forward with her hands on her hips. You're punishing innocent children for adult disagreements. That's what you're doing. Robert cut in before I could respond, his voice sharp. You didn't seem concerned about those children learning values from a kept woman and bad influence until the money stopped. Jill's face went even redder, but she didn't have an answer for that. I took a deep breath and laid out exactly what needed to happen. If you want any chance of fixing this, here's what it takes. A full apology to both Robert and me in front of our entire family. An acknowledgement of the financial support I provided for 5 years. And a genuine explanation to your children about why you said cruel things about their aunt. Kendall's face went bright red, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Jill shook her head immediately, like I'd asked her to do something impossible. That would humiliate me, Kendall said, her voice rising. Making me apologize in front of everyone would make me look like a bad person. I felt something twist in my chest, something between anger and bitter amusement. That's exactly the point, I said. You spent months making me look bad. At my wedding, at family events, to our parents, to my colleagues. Now you're worried about looking bad? Kendall started to say something else, but I held up my hand. We're done here. You know my terms. Until you're willing to meet them, don't come back. Robert stepped back and started closing the door. Kendall and Jill just stood there on our front porch, looking shocked that we were actually ending the conversation. The door clicked shut and I turned the deadbolt, my hands shaking slightly. Through the window beside the door, I could see them still standing there, Kendall gesturing wildly while Jill pulled out her phone. Robert pulled me away from the window and into his arms. My chest felt tight and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Robert held me against him while I tried to get my breathing under control. Through the door, I could hear Kendall's voice getting louder on the porch, then footsteps going down the stairs. Jill must have dragged her away. Robert kissed the top of my head and guided me to the couch. I sat down hard, my legs suddenly feeling weak. The whole confrontation kept replaying in my mind. Kendall's fake tears, Jill staring at the ground, their total shock when I actually held firm on my boundaries. Robert sat beside me and took both my hands in his. His were warm and steady while mine felt cold and shaky. We sat like that for maybe 5 minutes without talking. Then Jill started texting. The first message came through at 8:47 p.m. Can we talk privately? Just you and me? No, Kendall. I showed Robert the screen. He read it and shook his head. The second text arrived 2 minutes later. I think we can work this out between us. A private apology. Then we rebuild trust gradually. You don't need to humiliate me in front of everyone. I felt anger replace the shakiness in my chest. She still didn't get it. Still thought she could avoid real accountability. I typed back quickly. You publicly humiliated me repeatedly. At my wedding, at family events. To my colleagues, public accountability isn't negotiable. Her response came fast. That's cruel. You're punishing me for being honest about my concerns. I almost laughed. Honest about her concerns. That's what she was calling it now. Calling me a prostitute was just honest concern. I didn't bother responding. Robert squeezed my hand and his voice came out firm and clear. I won't have my wife disrespected anymore. Not in private, not in public. What they did was wrong. They benefited from your money for years while treating you like garbage. His support made something loosen in my chest. Having him there, backing me up completely, meant everything. Kendall had tried to make him invisible. Jill had called him my sugar daddy, but he was my partner, my equal, my husband, and he wasn't going to let them keep hurting me. My phone buzzed again. Kendall this time. Jill says you're being unreasonable. We came to apologize and you threw it in our faces. I showed Robert. He read it and his jaw tightened. They came to ask for money. That's what they came for. Not to apologize. I knew he was right. If they'd really wanted to apologize, they would have done it. Instead, Kendall cried and Jill made excuses, and they both looked shocked when I held firm. Robert pulled me close again. You handled that perfectly. Your boundaries are completely reasonable. But my hands were still shaking. My heart was still racing. Standing up to them felt right, but it also felt hard. Really hard. They were my sisters. I'd been taking care of them for 5 years, and now I just shut the door in their faces. Robert must have felt me tense up because he started rubbing circles on my back. They made their choices. They decided to publicly trash you and your marriage while taking your money. The consequences are on them. I nodded against his shoulder. He was right. I knew he was right, but it still hurt. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:30 a.m. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but Robert was already awake beside me. He nodded toward the phone. Might as well get it over with. I swiped to answer. Mom's voice came through immediately, high and stressed. Lisa, what happened yesterday? Kendall called me sobbing. She said you were cruel and unreasonable. I sat up in bed and took a breath. I told Kendall and Jill my terms for reconciliation. They didn't like them. What terms? Mom asked. I could hear the worry in her voice. A full apology to Robert and me in front of the whole family. Acknowledgement of the financial support I gave them for 5 years. And an explanation to their kids about why they said cruel things about me. Mom went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, That seems like a lot. Does it? I asked. Because they called me a gold digger at my wedding. In front of my colleagues. They told you I was prostituting myself. They treated Robert like he was invisible. Like he was just a wallet. All of that was public, Mom. So why should the apology be private? I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. She didn't have an answer for that. Robert sat up beside me and put his hand on my knee. His support steadied me. Mom finally spoke again. Maybe you're being too harsh. Family should forgive each other. You can work this out privately without making a big scene. I felt anger spike in my chest. You called me crying because Kendall told you I was prostituting myself. Do you remember that? Yes, but, she started. Do you think that deserves a private sweep under the rug? I interrupted. She told you I sold myself to an old man. Those were her exact words to you. Mom went quiet again. I pressed on. She said that to you. She said worse things to other people. At family events. At my nephew's birthday party. At Jill's daughter's recital. All public. All humiliating. So no, Mom. The apology needs to be public too. But the family, Mom said weakly. You don't want to tear the family apart. I'm not tearing anything apart. I corrected her. Kendall and Jill did that when they decided to publicly trash me while I was paying their bills. Mom's voice got smaller. I just feel caught in the middle. I don't want my daughters fighting like this. Over money and pride. This isn't about money or pride, I said firmly. This is about respect. This is about accountability for months of public cruelty. There's a difference. Mom didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she sighed. I just want my family back together. I do too, I said. But not at the cost of my self-respect. Not by pretending their behavior was okay. If they want to fix this, they know what they need to do. We ended the call a few minutes later. Mom still sounded stressed, but she'd stopped trying to convince me to back down. Robert pulled me back against him. You're doing the right thing. I know, I said. But I felt exhausted. It was only 6:45 in the morning and I already felt drained. Work became my escape over the next few days. I threw myself into my surgery schedule, taking on extra cases when other surgeons needed coverage. The operating room was the one place where everything made sense. Clear problems, clear solutions, no emotional manipulation, just medicine. But Camilla noticed. She cornered me in the hospital cafeteria on Thursday afternoon. I was grabbing coffee between cases when she sat down across from me. You look tense, she said. More than usual. I tried to brush it off. Just busy. Long week. Camilla raised one eyebrow. She'd known me for 6 years. We'd presented at 3 conferences together. She could tell when I was lying. Family stuff? She asked gently. I looked at my coffee cup. Then I looked at her. And suddenly everything came pouring out. The years of financial support, the cruel comments about my marriage, the canceled trips, the confrontation at my door, Kendall and Jill showing up demanding money, my terms for reconciliation, Mom trying to mediate, all of it. Camilla listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I was at your wedding reception, she said quietly. I heard what Kendall said. My stomach dropped. You heard? She nodded. I've been angry on your behalf ever since. Half the people there were shocked. Several of our colleagues have privately told me they're concerned about your family dynamics. Learning that my professional colleagues had witnessed that humiliation made my face burn. But it also made something settle in my chest. Validation. Other people had seen it, had recognized how wrong it was. You did nothing wrong, Camilla said firmly. Setting boundaries with toxic family members is healthy, not cruel. What they did to you, calling you those names while you were supporting them financially, that's what's cruel. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. Thank you, I said, for saying that. She squeezed my hand again. You're one of the best surgeons I know. You're brilliant and kind and generous. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. We sat there for a few more minutes. Then my pager went off and I had to go. But Camilla's words stayed with me through the rest of my shift. Other people had seen it, had recognized the cruelty. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. What Kendall and Jill did was wrong. 2 weeks after the doorstep confrontation, my phone buzzed with a text from Kendall. Can we meet for coffee? I need to talk to you. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I screenshot the message and sent it to Robert. What do you think? I typed. His response came back 3 minutes later. Up to you. But if you go, public place. Time limit. Don't let her manipulate you. I read his message twice. Then I looked at Kendall's text again. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me was curious what she'd say now. I typed back to Robert. Good idea. I'll meet her at the cafe near the hospital. Lunch break tomorrow. Gives me an excuse to leave after 30 minutes. Robert sent back a thumbs up. Then added, I'm proud of you. You're handling this exactly right. I smiled at my phone. Then I texted Kendall back. Tomorrow, 12:30. Cafe on Market Street near the hospital. I have to be back by 1 o'clock. Her response was immediate. Thank you. I'll be there. I put my phone down and looked at Robert. He was making dinner in our kitchen, chopping vegetables for stir-fry. The evening light came through the window and hit his silver hair. He looked over at me and smiled. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll handle it together. I nodded. We would. Because that's what partners did. That's what marriage meant. Not a gold digger and her victim. Not a kept woman and her sugar daddy. Just 2 people who loved each other, supporting each other through hard things. Kendall could accept that or not. But either way, I wasn't backing down. The next day, I drove to the cafe during my lunch break. I picked a table near the window where I could see the parking lot. My phone showed 12:30, then 12:35, then 12:40. Kendall finally walked in at 12:45 looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes. She dropped into the chair across from me without even saying hello. Things have been so hard since you cut us off. She started talking immediately. Jeffrey's still looking for work and the kids keep asking about Hawaii, and I'm trying to hold everything together, but it's just so much. I held up my hand. Are you here to apologize or complain? Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked at me like I'd slapped her. I'm trying to explain. You're listing your problems. That's not the same as taking responsibility for what you said about me and Robert. She looked down at her coffee cup, the one she'd ordered before sitting down without asking if I wanted anything. It's been stressful. Jeffrey's job situation, the kids' activities, dance class and soccer and tutoring. I've been under a lot of pressure. I was under pressure too, I said. While I was paying your mortgage for 8 months. While I was covering your kids' private school. Your vacations, your car repairs, everything. And I never called you a prostitute at a family event. She flinched. That's not fair. What's not fair? That I'm pointing out you publicly humiliated me while I was financially supporting you? That seems pretty fair to me. Kendall twisted her napkin between her hands. Look, I'm sorry you felt hurt by what I said. The non-apology landed like a brick. I felt my jaw tighten. Sorry I felt hurt? That's what you're going with? She looked confused. What? Sorry I felt hurt isn't an apology. It's you saying I'm too sensitive. A real apology would be sorry I said cruel, untrue things about you and your husband. Sorry I called you a gold digger and a prostitute. Sorry I made those accusations while you were paying for my life. Kendall's face went red. You're being too sensitive about this. Siblings say harsh things sometimes. We fight. That's normal. I leaned forward. Calling someone a prostitute at their wedding reception isn't normal sibling conflict. Telling our mother that I sold myself to an old man isn't a fight. Pulling your kids away from me at a birthday party and announcing I'm a bad influence isn't harsh words. You involved our entire family, my colleagues. You made it public and cruel. She crossed her arms. So what do you want from me? I already told you. Full apology to Robert and me. In front of the family. Acknowledgement of the financial support I gave you. Explanation to your kids about why you said those things. Kendall shook her head immediately. That would make me look terrible in front of everyone. You already made me look terrible in front of everyone. That's the point. You damaged my reputation. Now you're worried about yours? But extended family would think I'm awful. They'd judge me. They already judge me. You made sure of that. Remember? Gold digger. Prostitute. Kept woman. Those were your words. Not mine. Kendall stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. This isn't going to work if you're going to throw everything back in my face. I'm not throwing anything. I'm stating facts. You said those things. Multiple times. To multiple people. And now you want me to just forget about it and go back to paying for your life. That's not how this works. She grabbed her purse. I tried. I came here and tried to apologize. You tried to blame your stress and offer a non-apology. That's not trying. That's manipulation. Kendall's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel bad anymore. I'd seen her cry before when she wanted something. When the crying didn't work, she'd get angry. I watched her face shift through the emotions like she was running through a script. Fine, she said. Be that way. Until you're willing to take real accountability, I said. We have nothing more to discuss. She walked out without another word. Through the window, I watched her get in her car. She sat there for a minute before driving away. Her face looked angry. Not sorry, not remorseful. Just mad that I hadn't given in. I finished my coffee slowly, checked my phone. 12:58. Perfect timing. I walked back to the hospital for my afternoon surgeries. That evening, I was making dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Lisa? It was Jill. Can we talk? Just you and me. No, Kendall. I put down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. What about? I think Kendall's approach isn't working. Jill's voice was careful. Too careful. I want to try something different. A strategy conversation. That's what this was. I leaned against the counter. I'm listening. What they said was hurtful. Jill started. I can acknowledge that. What Robert and I have is real, and we shouldn't have questioned it. I want to write you both a letter. A real apology. In writing. Why not apologize publicly? I asked. You didn't have a problem being public before. There was a pause. I work in education. A public apology like that could affect my professional reputation. Parents talk. School board members hear things. I need to protect my career. The excuse sounded hollow even as she said it. You weren't worried about my professional reputation when you called Robert my sugar daddy in front of my medical colleagues. Silence. Long and uncomfortable. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. That long pause stretched between us until Jill finally spoke again. Her voice different now. Smaller. Vaughn is furious with me. He blames me for all of this. We fight about money every single night, and he says I destroyed our relationship with you on purpose. The words came out rushed like she'd been holding them in too long. He's threatening to pull Rosemary out of private school. He says we can't afford it anymore, and it's my fault because I alienated you. Her voice cracked on the last word, and part of me felt bad for my niece getting caught in the middle of this mess. Rosemary loved that school. She had friends there. A good teacher. But I recognized what Jill was doing even as sympathy tugged at me. She was using her daughter to make me feel guilty. To make me responsible for fixing her marriage and her money problems. I took a breath before responding. I'm sorry Rosemary is in that position. I really am. But your marriage problems aren't my responsibility, Jill. Your financial decisions aren't mine to fix. Especially not after how you treated me and Robert. You called him my sugar daddy in front of my colleagues. You told Mom I was prostituting myself. Those weren't mistakes made under stress. Those were choices you made repeatedly over months. Her breathing changed on the other end. Got harder, faster. So you're just going to let Rosemary suffer? Let my marriage fall apart? You're going to be vindictive and enjoy watching us struggle? The anger in her voice was sharp now. All that fake calm from earlier completely gone. Is that what this is about? Revenge? I kept my own voice level even though my chest felt tight. I'm not enjoying watching anyone struggle. But I'm also not going to be disrespected and insulted and then immediately expected to resume financial support like nothing happened. You want accountability, Jill. Real accountability. Not just sorry you felt hurt. Not just a private letter that lets you save face. You humiliated me publicly, so if you want my help again, you take accountability publicly. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You're being ridiculous. This is family. Family forgives each other. We move on. That's easy to say when you're the one who needs forgiveness, I said. When you're the one who needs money. Where was all this family forgiveness talk when you were calling me a kept woman? The line went silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Hostile. Then Jill spoke one more time, her voice cold. Fine. Have it your way. The phone clicked off abruptly, and I sat there staring at my cell screen showing the ended call. My hand was shaking slightly. The confrontation left me feeling drained and angry and sad all at once. I heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Robert coming into our home office. He took one look at my face and crossed the room to where I sat. What happened? Jill called. I showed him my phone even though the call log didn't tell the story. She admitted Vaughn is furious about their money situation, that he's threatening to pull Rosemary from private school, that their marriage is falling apart. Robert pulled over the other desk chair and sat down facing me. And she wanted you to fix it. It wasn't a question. She tried to make me feel guilty about Rosemary, about her marriage problems. Then when I wouldn't give in, she got angry and accused me of being vindictive, of enjoying watching them struggle. He reached out and took my hand. You're doing the right thing. Their financial problems are consequences of their own choices, of how they treated you, of their cruelty. You didn't create this situation. They did. I know. My voice came out smaller than I intended, but it still feels awful. That's because you're a good person, he said. You care about your family even when they don't deserve it. But caring about them doesn't mean you have to accept abuse. Doesn't mean you have to be their ATM while they trash you to everyone who'll listen. We sat there in the office for a while, his hand warm around mine, until I felt steady enough to get up and make dinner. Life kept moving forward even when family drama tried to drag everything backward. A month passed after that phone call with Jill. A month of blessed quiet where no one showed up at our door demanding money or called with crisis after crisis. I focused on work. Did 3 complicated surgeries in 1 week that all went well. Went hiking with Robert on a beautiful Saturday where the fall colors were just starting to turn the mountains orange and red. Started sleeping better at night without the constant weight of my sister's judgment and demands. Then Mom called one evening while I was making pasta for dinner. I almost didn't answer because I was tired and didn't want another conversation about family unity and forgiveness. But something made me pick up. Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetie. How are you? Her voice sounded careful, cautious. I'm good. Working a lot. Robert and I went hiking last weekend. That's nice. She paused and I could feel the real reason for her call coming. I wanted to let you know that Jeffrey finally found a job. Kendall called me yesterday all excited about it. The way she said it made it sound like I should be happy about this news. Like this somehow changed things. That's good for them, I said neutrally, stirring the pasta sauce. It doesn't pay as much as his old position, Mom continued. Significantly less, actually. But it's something. Kendall's looking for work herself now. First time she's job hunted since before the kids were born. The undertone in her voice was clear even if she didn't say it directly. They're trying now. They're working hard. Maybe you should help. I turned off the burner and leaned against the counter. Mom, I helped for 5 years while they were trying. While Jeffrey was job hunting before, while Kendall was being a stay-at-home mom, I paid their mortgage for 8 months, covered their vacations, paid for private school, car repairs, everything. And you know what they did in return? They called me a gold digger at my wedding, told everyone I was prostituting myself, treated Robert like garbage, made me look terrible in front of my colleagues and our whole family. Silence on the other end. Then Mom spoke quietly. I know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About everything you said last time we talked. I never really thought about how much you were supporting them financially. I just knew you helped sometimes, but I didn't realize the extent of it. Her voice got even softer. And I'm sorry for believing Kendall's characterization of your marriage without asking you about it directly. Without talking to you first. The apology caught me off guard. It sounded genuine. Not like she was just saying what I wanted to hear. Thank you for saying that, Mom. That means a lot. I really am sorry, Lisa. Kendall made it sound so concerning. The age gap and the money and everything. She painted this picture and I just believed it without questioning. Without considering that you're a successful surgeon yourself. That you don't need anyone's money. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear. I appreciate the apology. I really do. But I also need you to stop pressuring me to reconcile with Kendall and Jill on their terms. I need you to stop calling with updates designed to make me feel guilty or responsible for fixing their problems. There was a long pause before Mom responded. I just want my daughters to get along like you did before. That's all I've ever wanted. I took a breath and said something I'd been thinking about for weeks. We never really got along, Mom. I was just funding their lives while absorbing their judgment and criticism. That's not getting along. That's me being a doormat while they took advantage. Mom didn't say anything for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was uncomfortable. I suppose that's true. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. I could hear her processing this realization in real time. We talked for a few more minutes about other things, lighter topics, before saying goodbye. After I hung up, I felt lighter somehow. Like Mom finally understanding the situation took some weight off my shoulders, even if nothing else had changed. The next week, I was walking to my car after a long shift at the hospital when someone called my name from across the parking lot. I turned to see Hugh McCarthy heading toward me. He was one of Robert's colleagues in cardiothoracic surgery. Older guy with gray hair and a kind face. We'd met at a few hospital functions but didn't know each other well. Lisa, hey, do you have a minute? Sure, what's up? I stopped next to my car, keys in hand. He looked a bit uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Robert mentioned some of what's been going on with your family. I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, but I wanted to share something with you. He paused like he was choosing his words carefully. I went through something similar with my brother about 10 years ago. The constant borrowing money, the criticism of my life choices, the entitlement. It was exhausting. I finally had to cut him off completely. Set firm boundaries. And you know what? It was the best thing I ever did for myself, and for our relationship eventually. I felt something loosen in my chest hearing someone else had been through this, had made the same hard choice. How did your family react? Oh, they were furious at first. My mother didn't speak to me for 6 months, said I was being cruel and selfish. But I held firm, and eventually my brother got his act together, took responsibility for his own life. Now we actually have a decent relationship built on mutual respect instead of financial dependence and resentment. Hugh smiled slightly. Family doesn't get unlimited chances to hurt you just because you share DNA. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let them face the consequences of their choices. Thank you for telling me that, I said. It helps to know I'm not crazy for setting these boundaries. You're not crazy at all. You're being healthy. Robert's proud of you, by the way. He talks about how strong you've been through all this. We chatted for another minute before Hugh headed to his own car, and I got into mine. Sitting there in the parking lot with the late afternoon sun slanting through the windshield, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real peace about my decisions. About standing my ground. About demanding respect instead of just accepting whatever treatment my sisters dished out. I started the car and headed home to Robert, ready for whatever came next. That weekend, Robert took me to our favorite Italian place downtown, the one with the red checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. We hadn't been there since before all the family drama started. The hostess recognized us and smiled as she led us to our usual corner table. Robert ordered the chicken parmesan he always gets, and I got my regular pasta with marinara. For the first time in weeks, we talked about normal things. He told me about a complicated surgery he'd performed that morning, how the patient's arteries were positioned in an unusual way that made the procedure tricky. I shared about a case where I'd removed a kid's appendix just before it burst. We talked about work stuff, medical conferences coming up, research papers we wanted to write together. Then Robert brought up the hiking trip we'd been planning before everything fell apart with my sisters. Mount Wilson has that trail we wanted to try, he said. The one that goes up to the old observatory. We could go next month when the weather cools down a bit. I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for months. Yes, let's do that. I'd really like to get away for a weekend. Just us. He reached across the table and took my hand. I've missed this. Missed us just being us without all the family stress hanging over everything. Me too. I squeezed his fingers. I didn't realize how much their behavior was affecting us until now. Walking back to the car after dinner, Robert put his arm around my shoulders and I leaned into him. The night air was cool and the street was quiet. I thought about how my sister's constant criticism had been like poison seeping into my marriage. Every snide comment, every judgmental look, every time they treated Robert like he was just a wallet I'd married. It had been wearing on both of us in ways I hadn't fully understood until tonight. Robert had been so patient through all of it. Never once had he suggested I cut them off or stop helping them financially. He'd just quietly endured their disrespect because he loved me. That night in bed, I told him I was proud of how I'd handled everything. He turned to face me in the dark. I'm proud of you too. You stood up for yourself and for us. That took real strength. I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't, but it was necessary. He was quiet for a moment. I've been worried about you. Worried this was eating you up inside. But you've been so strong through it all. 2 months passed. Work kept me busy with back-to-back surgeries and consultations. Kendall and Jill didn't try to contact me again after those failed attempts. Mom called occasionally, but she'd stopped pushing me to reconcile on their terms. Then one Thursday afternoon, I came home to find a thick envelope in the mailbox. My name and address were handwritten in Kendall's careful script. I took it inside and sat at the kitchen table staring at it for a few minutes before opening it. The letter was 3 pages long, typed and printed, with both Kendall's and Jill's signatures at the bottom. Dear Lisa, it started. We're writing to apologize for our behavior over the past several months. We were wrong. We were cruel. We were hypocritical. The letter went on to list specific things they'd said and done, calling me a gold digger at my wedding reception, telling Mom I was prostituting myself, pulling their kids away from me and saying I was a bad influence, making the sugar daddy comment in front of Robert, taking my financial support for granted while criticizing my life choices. Each point was acknowledged clearly without excuses or justifications. The second page explained they'd been going to family therapy together for the past 6 weeks. Their therapist helped them understand how their behavior toward me had been abusive, how their financial dependence on me had created a toxic dynamic where they felt entitled to my money while also resenting me for having it, how their jealousy of my professional success and financial stability had manifested as cruel judgment of my marriage. The final page asked if I would be willing to meet with them in a therapy session with their therapist present. They understood if I wasn't ready. They understood if I never wanted to speak to them again, but they hoped I might give them a chance to apologize in person and begin rebuilding trust. When Robert came home from the hospital that evening, I handed him the letter without saying anything. He read it carefully, then read it again. This is different from before, he said finally. This is actual accountability, real acknowledgement of what they did wrong. I nodded. I think so too, but I don't know if I'm ready to see them. He set the letter on the counter. What does your gut tell you? That they're desperate and this might be another manipulation. but also that maybe the therapy is actually helping them understand how badly they treated us. Robert leaned against the counter thinking. I suggest you agree to the therapy session, but maintain your boundaries about what reconciliation requires. Don't let them think one apology session fixes everything. You're right. I need to be clear about expectations. The next morning, I sat down at my computer and found the therapist's email address at the bottom of the letter. I wrote a message explaining I appreciated my sister's apology, but wanted to discuss the session format before agreeing to attend. I asked about the therapist's approach, how long Kendall and Jill had been in treatment, and what the goals would be for a joint session. The therapist responded that afternoon. Her name was Dr. Smith, and her email was professional but warm. She explained Kendall and Jill had been seeing her together for 7 weeks, working on understanding their behavior patterns and taking responsibility for their actions. She said the joint session would be structured with Kendall and Jill reading prepared apology statements while I listened without interruption. Then I would have time to respond and ask questions. The goal wasn't immediate reconciliation, but rather creating space for genuine accountability. I wrote back agreeing to one session scheduled for the following Saturday morning. Robert offered to come with me, but I decided to go alone. This was something I needed to face myself. The therapy office was in a medical building downtown, small and quiet with comfortable chairs in the waiting room. Kendall and Jill were already there when I arrived. They both looked nervous. Kendall's hands were shaking slightly as she held a folder of papers. Jill kept smoothing down her shirt like she didn't know what to do with her hands. Dr. Smith came out to greet us, a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and kind eyes. She led us into her office and gestured for us to sit. Kendall and Jill sat together on a small couch. I took the armchair across from them. Dr. Smith sat slightly to the side where she could see all of us. She explained the format we'd discussed, then nodded to Kendall to begin. Kendall opened her folder and pulled out a typed page. Her hands were shaking so much the paper rustled. She took a deep breath and started reading. Lisa, I'm sorry for calling you a gold digger at your wedding reception. That was cruel and untrue, and I said it in front of your colleagues to deliberately humiliate you. I'm sorry for telling Mom you were prostituting yourself. Those words were vicious and designed to turn our family against you and Robert. I'm sorry for taking your financial support for granted for 5 years while criticizing your life choices and your marriage. I treated you like a bank account instead of my sister. Her voice shook, but she kept her eyes on me the whole time. I'm sorry for pulling my children away from you and saying you were a bad influence. I was using them as weapons to hurt you. I'm sorry for not acknowledging Robert as your husband and treating him like he was invisible or just a wallet. He deserves respect, and I failed to give him any. Kendall's voice broke on the last sentence, but she finished reading. Then she set the paper down and waited. Jill picked up her own typed statement. Lisa, I'm sorry for calling Robert your sugar daddy in front of your colleagues. That comment was meant to demean both of you and your marriage. I'm sorry for trying to turn my daughters against you by saying you were a kept woman who sold herself. I was poisoning their relationship with their aunt because of my own issues. I'm sorry for feeling entitled to your money while judging how you chose to live your life and who you chose to marry. The hypocrisy of taking your financial help while calling you a gold digger was inexcusable. Jill paused and looked up at me. I need to admit something else. I was jealous of your professional success and your financial stability. Jealous that you had your life together while mine felt like it was falling apart. So I lashed out at you and your marriage because it was easier than facing my own problems. That jealousy doesn't excuse my behavior, but it's the truth about where it came from. Dr. Smith shifted in her chair and looked at me. She asked how I felt hearing what Kendall and Jill had just said. I took a moment before answering. The apologies felt more real than their previous attempts, I admitted. But words in a controlled setting were just words. I needed to see changed behavior over time, not just prepared statements read from typed pages. Kendall's hands were still shaking slightly as she set her paper down on the coffee table. Jill nodded slowly like she understood what I meant. Dr. Smith made a note on her pad. Kendall spoke up first, her voice less steady than when she'd been reading. She asked what changed behavior would actually look like. I leaned forward in my chair. No more comments about my marriage or the age gap, I explained. No more jokes or snide remarks to anyone. They needed to acknowledge in front of our family that they were wrong about Robert, not just to me privately, but to everyone who heard them call me a gold digger and a prostitute. And they needed to understand that any future financial help from me would be a gift I chose to give, not an obligation or an expectation. Kendall's face went pale. Jill agreed immediately, saying those terms were fair and she would follow them. Kendall hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. Her nod looked reluctant, but real. Dr. Smith suggested we move slowly toward rebuilding trust. She recommended starting with occasional supervised family gatherings, where she or another neutral party could be present. Small steps, she said. No pressure to jump back into regular contact right away. The session ended 20 minutes later. I walked out to the parking lot where Robert was waiting in his car. He'd been reading a medical journal but put it down when he saw me. He asked how I felt. I got in the passenger seat and closed the door. Cautiously hopeful, I told him, but not ready to fully trust them yet. I needed to see if they could actually follow through on what they promised. Robert reached over and squeezed my hand. He said he would support whatever pace I needed to set for reconciliation. If I wanted to take it slow, we'd take it slow. If I decided I wasn't ready at all, that was okay too. 3 weeks passed. Mom called to invite us to a family dinner at her house. Kendall and Jill would be there with their families. I agreed after talking it over with Robert. We arrived at Mom's house on a Sunday afternoon. The smell of pot roast came from the kitchen. Kendall and Jill were already there, standing in the living room with their husbands and kids. Kendall saw us first. She walked over and greeted Robert warmly, shaking his hand and asking about his work. Jill did the same, smiling at both of us without any of the usual tension in her face. The difference was noticeable. They weren't being fake polite. They seemed genuinely relaxed. Victoria ran up to me and hugged my legs. She was Kendall's oldest, the one who'd accidentally revealed the truth about my financial support at Christmas. During dinner, Victoria looked around the table at all of us. She asked innocently if we were all friends again. Kendall didn't panic or deflect. She handled it beautifully. She told Victoria that Aunt Lisa and Uncle Robert are very important to their family. She explained that she had made mistakes she was working to fix. The honesty was appropriate for a child's understanding. Victoria seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to eating her mashed potatoes. I was impressed by how Kendall handled it. Jill spoke up during the main course. She mentioned she'd found a part-time job at a tutoring center. Vaughn had been picking up extra shifts at his company. They were handling their finances themselves now. The pride in her voice suggested genuine growth rather than martyrdom. She wasn't saying it to make me feel guilty or to hint that they needed help. She was just sharing their progress. After dinner, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was helping clear plates. She thanked me for giving them another chance. I corrected her gently. They were giving themselves another chance by finally taking accountability. I was allowing space to see if the change was real. Mom nodded and squeezed my arm. Over the next month, Kendall and Jill maintained consistent, respectful behavior. They invited Robert and me to Victoria's school play. They asked us to join them for coffee one Saturday morning. No weird comments, no hints about money. They seemed genuinely interested in our lives beyond what we could provide financially. Kendall asked about a complex surgery I'd mentioned at the play. Jill wanted to hear about the hiking trip Robert and I were planning. The conversations felt normal. One evening, Robert and I were sitting on our back porch after work. The sun was setting and we were just talking about our day. Robert said something that surprised me. He told me he finally felt like part of my family rather than a walking wallet they tolerated. His relief was visible in the way his shoulders relaxed. I realized how much their treatment had hurt him too. I'd been so focused on my own hurt that I hadn't fully considered what it was like for him to be invisible at family gatherings, to be called a sugar daddy and treated like he was buying me. He'd endured all of that quietly because he loved me and didn't want to make things harder. I apologized for putting him through that. He shook his head and said I hadn't put him through anything. My sisters had. But now things felt different. He felt like they actually saw him as a person, as my husband, not just as money. A week later, I called Jill and told her I wanted to cover 1 semester of Rosemary's tuition. I made it clear this was a one-time gift, not me going back to the old pattern of paying for everything. Jill thanked me quietly and said she understood. 3 days later, a card arrived in the mail. Jill had written a long note thanking me for the help and explaining how much it meant to Rosemary. She didn't ask for anything else or hint at future support. The note felt genuine, like she actually got it now. Robert read it over my shoulder and squeezed my arm. He said it seemed like real progress. Kendall called 2 weeks later asking if Robert and I could come to Victoria's birthday party. I agreed after checking with Robert. We showed up on Saturday afternoon with a gift. The atmosphere felt completely different from past family events. Kendall greeted us warmly at the door and actually hugged Robert. Her husband Jeffrey shook Robert's hand and asked about his recent surgery cases. During the party, I braced myself for the usual comments, but none came. Victoria ran up and hugged me tight. She told me she was glad I was there. Kendall's other kids clustered around Robert asking him questions about being a doctor. He patiently answered them all, smiling the whole time. Later, my aunt pulled me aside and said she was glad to see us all getting along better. 2 of Kendall's friends made similar comments. The whole day felt normal in a way family gatherings never had before. 4 months after I'd cut off the money, Robert and I decided to host Thanksgiving at our house. I invited Kendall and Jill with their families. Both of them immediately offered to bring dishes. On Thanksgiving morning, Kendall showed up early with her green bean casserole and asked what else she could do to help. Jill arrived with homemade rolls and started setting the table without being asked. Their husbands helped Robert set up extra chairs in the dining room. The kids played together in the living room while we cooked. Kendall complimented our house and asked about the art on our walls. Jill thanked us for hosting and said how nice it was to all be together. When we sat down to eat, Jeffrey said a prayer thanking God for family. Everyone held hands around the table. Kendall and Jill both treated Robert like he belonged there, asking his opinion on things and including him in conversations naturally. As I looked around our dining room at everyone laughing and talking, I felt genuinely happy. The relationships weren't perfect and probably never would be, but they were honest now, built on mutual respect instead of financial obligation and hidden anger. Kendall wasn't secretly resenting me while spending my money. Jill wasn't calling me names behind my back while I paid her bills. They saw Robert as my husband now, not as a wallet or sugar daddy. Robert squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. We'd made the right choice demanding better treatment. It saved my self-respect. But it also gave my sisters the push they needed to become better versions of themselves. That mattered more than I'd expected it to.